too frequently, but such is the life cycle, and every one of us has to at some point do that dance with mortality. None of us gets out of here alive. So we thank God for his creative genius, his amazing artistic gifts, and the rich musical legacy of Roy Ayers lives on. But Roy Ayers has passed away at the age of 84. I love that track from Roy Ayers, You Send Me. We are in the second hour of this program. I'm delighted to have you with us. As promised in this hour, conversation with Arab Jewish journalist Rachel Shabi about her new book. It's called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. And I look forward to a spirited conversation in this hour about anti-Semitism, what it is, what it ain't, why the definition is so elastic, depending on one's perspective, or so narrow, depending on another person's perspective, and why we ought to be having these conversations about anti-Semitism in public and not behind closed doors. Rachel, good to have you on. How are you today?
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's my great delight to have you on. Let me start by reading the first paragraph of your introduction. I think it will frame this conversation quite nicely as we move through this hour. I quote from Rachel Shabi's introduction in the text, Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. In early December 2023, a video about anti-Semitism went viral. Reflexively, I braced, and sure enough, it delivered everything I'd come to expect. The politicized, polarized messiness, the bad faith contortions and confusions, the dumbed-down, meaning-stripped binaries. In short, all the fuel needed to ignite the sprawling online dumpster fire, also known as the modern debate around anti-Semitism. Powerful opening paragraph in the intro to this book. I start by asking you, Rachel, to take me back to that video.
Sure. Well, the video was a moment among many moments that we've been experiencing over the last few years, but certainly heightened in the last 16 months with October 7 and everything that's happened since, where we had three US university heads from elite American universities being hauled through a House committee on anti-Semitism, and essentially being yelled at by the Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who I believe has now been appointed your ambassador to the UN. And this House Committee on Education and the Workforce, it had convened because of what has been a global spike in anti-Semitism, so verbal and racial assaults against Jews all around the world, and including on US campuses. But the trouble was that, there was this viral clip that raced around the internet and dominated news headlines and played out in the news day after day after day. And in the end, two of the three university heads had to resign over it because Elise Stefanik was asking them a question about genocide. Does the genocide of Jews violate university rules of conduct? And she framed it as a yes/no question. And they all sort of equivocated and resorted to this weird legalese, which was just off and made Jewish people feel like, wow, this is horrendous. The presidents of leading US universities can't be trusted to call out anti-Semitism for what it is. But if you actually watch the entire hearing, which I did, you could see that this had been set up to ambush them. Now, they fell for the trap, but it was a trap because in the questions leading to that showdown that went viral, Stefanik was suggesting that calls for intifada, which Palestinians and their supporters have long used in protests, in pro-Palestine solidarity events, constituted genocide for Jews. And so in that context, the university heads were wary of making that association. And actually, what came through in the 5-hour debate was that they were thinking carefully about the subject. They were thinking about how to protect all their racialized minority students at university campuses. But all of that just got lost in this kind of gotcha moment that had been engineered by the right wing. So we could see that anti-Semitism, far from being a topic that they were willing to handle sensitively and carefully, had been politicized and had become this wedge issue with which to clobber the left wing.
Hold that thought. We'll pick this conversation up. It's going to be a good one, I can tell already. What I recall saying then, and I repeat now, is that these academicians were caught in a political space, and they weren't ready. It's one thing to be in the ivory tower of the academy. It's another thing to make your case and to know how to make your claim, how to press your claim in a political space. Nonetheless, Rachel Shabi is right. The issue then got politicized. We'll pick the story up there when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
There's new reaction following the Trump administration's sweeping efforts to cut the federal workforce.
Fired but not forgotten. The Testimony Project. Bearing witness, breaking silence, building community. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to amplifying the voices of Black federal workers impacted by the mass firings. Rooted in the Black tradition of testimony, this initiative ensures that those who served us are not erased from history. Through firsthand accounts, investigative storytelling, and community-driven dialogue, we intend to expose injustice, preserve truth, and demand accountability. If you or someone you know has been forced out of federal employment due to the mass firings, please contact us at info@smileyaudiomedia.com or via the open mic feature on the KBLA 1580 app. We want to hear from you and share your story. KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pegol is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in.
But we're okay with that.
You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Rachel Shabi, who's author of the new book, Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. In case you've just tuned in, you missed a rich first 10 minutes of Rachel laying out this narrative that we're going to unpack as we move through the rest of this hour. So you were talking about the impact, Rachel, of this hearing, at least to find it going in on these college presidents some months ago. And you laid the story out quite nicely. But you were making the point that at that point, this issue of anti-Semitism gets politicized. Pick up the story there.
Well, I think what we saw with that hearing is something that we've been seeing play out for some years now, which is that anti-Semitism or claims of it have been politicized, primarily in order to silence legitimate criticisms of Israel and the capacity of Palestinians to describe in their voice and in their terms their experiences of Israeli violations and aggressions toward them. Mm-hmm. But it's also attached itself to a sort of wider bashing, political bashing of the left more widely, or the liberal left more widely. So anything from Black Lives Matter to critical race theory to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, all have been accused in various ways of promoting or harboring anti-Semitism. So we can see that it has developed into a wedge issue that the far right uses to bash the left. Yeah. And then the question is, what do we do with that? How does the left respond to that? How does the anti-racist left respond to that?
Yep. We'll get to those. Those are great questions. Now you're doing my job, Rachel. I ain't mad at you. Those are the questions. No. I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you. We will get to that in this hour. How the left responds. Trust and believe. Let me ask a couple more questions though about this hearing that we all recall well here while we're still in this frame. To the point. Directly, what should, in retrospect, those college presidents have said? I hear the point you made earlier that if you watch the entire hearing, clearly they were set up. But in that particular moment, as I intimated earlier, these are a bunch of academicians in a political space. They weren't ready. They were in the wrong frame, the wrong mind frame, the wrong setting. Take it any way you will. But in retrospect, to perhaps have tamped down on the politicization of this issue of anti-Semitism, what should those college presidents have said in that particular moment?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I also really appreciate your framing and your appraisal of that moment. And it's something that I've thought about a lot, and other people have been in conversation with me about. So being asked, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your rules or codes of conduct? I mean, the answer, one would think, should be absolutely yes. Mm-hmm. Although we have not seen anyone call for that in our campuses, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Because I sincerely doubt, I mean, perhaps I'm wrong, but I sincerely doubt that campus protests at, say, Harvard or Penn State were actually calling for the genocide of Jews, right? So I think to answer the question, absolutely, yes, that would constitute, that would violate our rules. However, nobody has been calling for that on our campuses. Sort of covers both bases. Yeah,
I ask all of my lawyer friends listening right now, plug your ears for just 10 seconds. I'm going to bash you. I'm going to bash you just for 10 seconds. All my lawyer friends, cover your ears. All right, you're sufficiently warned. This is the trouble you get into listening to lawyers.
You're right, it was very legalese.
Yes.
It gave real legalese vibes.
Yeah, it was so legalese, and in that moment, they didn't meet the moment. They did not meet the moment. They should have answered that question very simply, in a straightforward way, just as Rachel did. Absolutely, that violates our policy. But we have not ... You just answered the question. But once she asked the question, but you're not answering my question. Once she comes at you 2 or 3 times and the light still hasn't gone off in your head that you're being set up here, you're not answering this question correctly, you're going to regret this moment. I don't get it. I say all the time, Rachel, I said it, as a matter of fact, one of our guests earlier this week, whose name I will not call so as to embarrass them, but it's been a whole week of shows, and every now and then I have a guest on this program who is brilliant in their own right, don't get me wrong. But I will tell my team of producers, this is why I tell y'all all the time that everybody in the academy, or most folk, many in the academy, are bright. You can't survive in the academy and escalate to the top of the ivory tower and be stuck on stupid. These are bright people. But not every academician has what I call a usable intellect. They've got the intellect, but it's not a usable intellect. And in that moment, even these college presidents did not have a usable intellect that would allow them to have met the moment. And so it is what it is. We're not going to try to relitigate that. But to Rachel's point, in that moment, this issue of anti-Semitism for the whole nation to see gets politicized in a way that, to my mind, I've been at this for a few decades, had not been politicized like that in quite a long time, if ever, which leads me to ask the next question, which is what you think the impact of those hearings were on the way anti-Semitism has, in fact, in this moment, been politicized.
Yeah, I think it's been absolutely devastating in layered and sometimes contradictory ways. I agree with you that we haven't seen things hit the peak that we have, not just with that hearing, but in the last 15 months generally, where anybody trying to protest, just crying out for a ceasefire in Gaza, just crying out because they don't want to see more people get killed, more babies get killed, right? Just crying out for the sanctity of human life, whether that's in Gaza or Israel or across the occupied West Bank or elsewhere. Everybody from the UN to here, the BBC, to Hollywood actors, to British pop singers, to Swedish climate campaigners was accused of anti-Semitism. And I think the net result of that is obviously there's a horrendous chill effect for those who do want to protest what's happening in Gaza. It's had a chilling effect on free speech to do that, but it's also just really been divisive and horrendous for our movements, because then we just get caught up in this horrendous argument that keeps us tackling every sort of aspect of this, whether it's pro-Palestine justice, whether it's tackling anti-Black racism, whether it's tackling Islamophobia, or whether it's tackling anti-Semitism. It keeps us in these horrible silos rather than united and collectively fighting all these things together. That's the main upshot.
Tell me more. No, I hear you. Tell me more about the ways in which you see, you're the author of the book, Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. Tell me more about the ways in which you see, how might I put this, this politicized conversation about anti-Semitism handcuffing free speech.
Well, I think primarily we're looking at the ability of Palestinians to describe the experience of Israel, of what that has been like for Palestinians. And that's not the same, obviously, as what it's been like for Israeli Jews. We have two peoples living in that region with two different histories and different realities that have created their existence in that region. Now, for Palestinians, unquestionably, the Jewish national project to create Israel in response to centuries of horrendous European persecution, for Palestinians, that has, since its origin, been experienced as settler colonialism, of violence and a dispossession and a displacement from their homes that has been the experience from the start up until this present day. Now, they need to be able to describe that. They need to be able to articulate that. And others need to be able to describe Israeli serial violations of international law and acts of aggression in that region without constantly being accused of anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And so the effect of that has been to chill free speech, because it's such a horrendous experience to be accused of that, to be falsely accused of that, I should stress. Right? There are some genuine accusations, but the false accusations have material consequences. They've resulted in job losses, people losing their reputations and livelihoods, quite often, from from academics to, scholars and writers and journalists and campaigners, that quite often that results in a legal case, which is horrendously stressful and can roll out for months. And so there are, material consequences to these politicized accusations, as a result of which, people become scared to speak out because they don't want to face the horrors of those accusations.
Yeah. Let me. I warn you. I'm about to flip this, Rachel. I'm about to flip it on you right quick here.
Flip it.
All right. Let me flip this. Talk to me about the ways in which a definition of anti-Semitism that is too liberal, that is too elastic, hurts and harms the cause of those who truly believe that anti-Semitism is, in fact, run amok. Does that question make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Okay. And I think both those sides of the question are true. We are living in a current environment where we have seen a spike in anti-Semitism globally. In the UK, the groups that monitor that have reported a spike in physical and verbal assaults against Jewish people, anything from, having bottles thrown at them to having, synagogues desecrated. Those are, that's a real thing that's happening. And so if we care about that, and we should, then obviously we want to find ways to educate people as part of our struggle against it. The trouble comes primarily when the idea that criticizing Israel is collapsed into and becomes synonymous with anti-Semitism. And we've seen this whole spate. It started in the mid-70s, actually in Israel itself, but over the decades has gained traction globally, whereby we now quite commonly see mainstream Jewish communal organizations and indeed governments globally proclaim that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. And I think that's the main source of the problem, because of course sometimes anti-Zionism can be anti-Semitic, and we should check for that, but it's not by definition the same thing. And the trouble, I think, is that it's not just about chilling free speech. It's that if you constantly politicize claims of anti-Semitism, then people stop taking you seriously. People stop believing you. And then that becomes a real problem. And it's something that I've seen happen. I've seen various versions across social media of, if you haven't been accused of anti-Semitism yet, you're not doing Palestinian advocacy right. Versions of that keep cropping up on social media. So it has produced this sort of inability to take seriously something that in this moment actually is serious and causing material harms.
I will ask you, as we move through this conversation, both sides of this question. Let me start with this, since we seem to be here in this moment anyway. What advice would you give? I've just got 2 minutes now. We'll continue when we come forward, actually about 90 seconds. We can, again, continue for the rest of the hour. But what advice would you give to those who do, in fact, believe, and you and I are two of them, that anti-Semitism is, in fact, on the rise, about not equating those two things, anti-Semitism, Zionism, as you laid it out? What advice would you give to them about those persons about decoupling those two things?
I mean, I think primarily with anti-Semitism, just as is the case with racism, with anti-Black racism, with Islamophobia, primarily what we're looking at is very low information environments. I'm in the UK, which has been, the origin story for a lot of racism, colonialism, the enslavement of people, and anti-Semitism, the origin story of many forms of anti-Semitism, in fact. And it just is the reality that people are low information about the idea that the countries in which they live are the origin story of many of these racisms, which continue to form structural and other harms in the current day. So I think just awareness, just leaning into and embracing the possibility that we might all have things to learn, and also things to share, because there are commonalities in these quite different experiences.
So the flip side of that question we'll tackle when we come forward with our guest, Rachel Shabi, whose book is called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. What is the question? Glad you asked. How the anti-racist left pushes back, responds to this political bashing that many have been subjected to because of their critique politically of the state of Israel and their policies, or for that matter, policies here in this country. We'll talk about that part and more when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say when we come forward? Because he's not going back. And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Black Texas Democrat Congressman Al Green is being censured by the House. During President Trump's speech Tuesday night, Green stood in the aisle of the House chamber and waved his cane at the president. Representative Al Green is preparing to file articles of impeachment against President Trump following his controversial comments about Gaza, suggesting U.S. takeover and resettlement of Palestinians. Green called these remarks dastardly deeds and akin to ethnic cleansing. Black New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams is expected to announce her mayoral campaign. She criticized Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams and vowed to fight President Trump's policies against immigrant families. And a rift has emerged between late singer and politician Jerry Butler's family and his caretaker over funeral arrangements. The caretaker scheduled a wake without the family's involvement. The family plans a public memorial on March 12th. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Imagine a photograph of your favorite place in California, then right in the middle of it, one piece of litter. Litter has no place in our lives, not one piece. Together, let's change that. Clean California. Zero litter is the goal. CleanCA.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
With President Obama in the house, Clippers guard James Harden delivered a spectacular performance Wednesday night at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Harden dropped 50 points in the Clippers' 123-115 win over Detroit, helping the Clippers to snap a 3-game losing streak. The 35-year-old Harden is the first Clippers player to reach 50 since Lou Williams did it at Golden State on January 10, 2018. Obama, who sat next to Clippers owner Steve Ballmer on the baseline, saw Harden make 14 to 24 shots, including 6 3-pointers. He also made 16 of 20 free throws. Harden ranks 4th in the NBA in 50-point games. Wilt Chamberlain is the all-time leader with 118, followed by Michael Jordan with 31 and Kobe with 25. The Lakers are home tonight against the New York Knicks at Crypto.com. The Lakers, number 2 in the Western Conference, are going for their 8th straight win. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Imagine a photograph of your favorite place in California, then right in the middle of it, one piece of litter. Litter has no place in our lives, not one piece. Together, let's change that. Clean California. Zero litter is the goal. CleanCA.com.
A new day is on the horizon. Who paved the way for the leaders of today? An untold number of remarkable women, known and unknown, who shaped our past and continue to inspire our future in every field of human endeavor, education, civil rights, technology, and more. Celebrating Women's History Month, we are KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to announce that, like George and Weezy,
we're moving on now.
Earlier this year, we were named a semifinalist for the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025. Wait for it. Wait for it.
You ready?
KBLA Talk 1580 was recently selected as one of 10 finalists being considered for this prestigious award. Hundreds of organizations, institutions, and even cities were nominated in the selection process. But KBLA Talk 1580 has made it to the finals. You're invited to watch live on Wednesday, April 16th. At 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, as Eco America announces the winner and the runner-up, awarding over $200,000 in prize money. To watch live, just go to ecoamerica.org to register and attend the online ceremony. That's ecoamerica.org. Don't miss the presentation of the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025, Wednesday, April 16th, and wish us luck. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black. He's a paradigm pioneer and the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley and Rachel Shabi, who's author of the new book, Arab Jewish Journalist. Her text is called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. And we're having a conversation here in public, not in private, about anti-Semitism, the ways in which it has been too narrowly defined or too elastic in its definition, and all the results and the impacts of the way we process this term, and the way, not just processing, but the way we have politicized conversations, such that people everywhere are being accused of being anti-Semitic when they say X, Y, or Z, and that may not be the right frame. I'm grateful for this book, again, Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism, and this conversation with its author, Rachel Shabi. So we were talking a moment ago, in case you've just tuned in. I asked Rachel a question that was, a bit bizarre, but she handled it as brilliantly as I knew she would. But I do think about these things, the ways in which, when we define terminology in ways that are too liberal, that are too elastic, there's that word again, the trouble, the damage we do to the cause of those who care about the issue, because we've just gone too far, done too much, and people are put upon as a result. So the flip side of that conversation, again, that Rachel has already unpacked for us, is how the anti-racist left navigates what Rachel described earlier as political bashing around these notions, these claims of anti-Semitism. So take that part now, Rachel Shabi.
Yeah, so I think the trouble, as I see it so far, has been that primarily the way that progressives respond is to bat off the politicized claims of anti-Semitism. Now, obviously, we do have to push back at politicized claims because, as we discussed before the break, there's a terrible effect on free speech, and there are also material consequences, devastating material and reputational consequences of these politicized accusations. The trouble is, primarily, is that that's all we do. And so I think part of the problem here is establishing progressive credibility on this subject. Mm-hmm. I mean, the right wing talk about solutions for or tackling anti-Semitism all the time, but their solutions are all horrible, right? It's all about more policing or bashing migrants and Muslims, or attacking Black Lives Matter, or shutting down free speech with definitions of anti-Semitism that bleed into criticism of Israel. All of their proposals are horrendous for progressives and for Jewish people, but they have solutions. And so what are we doing? What do we do to build credibility as progressives? And I think one of the issues that we're looking at is that generally, progressives have vacated that space of tackling anti-Semitism. And so what we've seen is that the right wing and the far right particularly has quite smartly and strategically filled that gap. So for me, what we need to think about is to boost our own credibility in talking about this issue.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about the ways that the right wing, again, to follow you, and for that matter, even Christian conservatives, and they can be one and the same, obviously, have exploited this rift, if you will.
So I think what we've seen over the last couple of decades is that the far right in particular has quite strategically has used this performative championing of Jewish people and pretending to care about Jewish people and anti-Semitism. They've used it as a way to rehabilitate their political fortunes. And we've seen that in the US, obviously, but also across Europe with far-right parties from France to Austria to the Netherlands use the same strategy, which is essentially to say, we care about anti-Semitism. Look, we are staunchly pro-Israel. How can we possibly be anti-Semitic, right? And these are parties, by the way, with, quite often Nazi roots and current and present appeal to anti-Semites, right? And so they do this, they rehabilitate their political fortunes by pretending to care about anti-Semitism. And that allows them to mainstream their current ideological obsession, which is Islamophobia, bashing Muslims, bashing migrants, and being incredibly authoritarian in terms of political and social policy. And so it's been this sort of sleight of hand that the far right has used. And I think for our purposes, one of the things to note is that it's incredibly divisive. It's pitting Jewish people and Muslim people against each other as though they're oppositional groups. But it's also not actually tackling anti-Semitism. There's just a performance of it.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking about the way we began this conversation, talking about those college presidents who were in front of Elise Stefanik in that congressional committee and all the hell that rained down on them thereafter, a couple of them losing their jobs, including the first black president of Harvard, Claudine Gay.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to that because your comment just now makes me think of this. I've asked you about how those who believe that anti-Semitism is spreading can do themselves no harm, if I can put it that way. I've just asked you now about how the anti-racist left ought to operate in a moment where they're being bashed politically for espousing, expressing their own points of views that some will deem as anti-Semitic because they disagree with it. The other question that occurs to me to ask is how you think in this moment institutions, including colleges and universities, where we started again this dialogue, how do these institutions navigate this sort of tricky terrain successfully to the extent they can?
It's a horrendous reality at the moment. And I'm glad you asked the question because I think that a lot of those organizations that you speak about, particularly universities, are really struggling to navigate this terrain because of the constraints put upon them by governments who are cleaving to definitions of anti-Semitism that conflate with that criticism of Israel. And so how do you operate in that space? And I guess for me, one of the heartening things is that actually we're seeing people put in the work to try and counter that with definitions of anti-Semitism that do not chill free speech, that allow for instance, pro-Palestinian groups to articulate criticism of Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism. So, for instance, I'm thinking about the Jerusalem Declaration of Anti-Semitism, which was put together by hundreds of scholars globally from the US, across the UK and Europe, scholars of anti-Semitism, amongst others, who've put together a definition that gives that breathing room, that gives that space for free speech. And I think they, and that definition, along with other organizations who are working in this space, Jewish-led organizations, have been offering support to students individually or universities collectively in order to be able to protect everybody's free speech, but also protect all students and all racialized minorities from racial hatred.
Yeah. As you well know, it is not just Donald J. Trump here in the U.S. There is a far-right ascendancy across the world. Politically, we see, again, this far-right ascendancy all around the globe. When we come forward, I want to ask Rachel Shabi about how the narrative around anti-Semitism may or may not be shifting. Here in the U.S., as you well know, that narrative is changing. There's Joe Biden, our former president, was of a particular generation, and he saw this Israel-Gaza conflict through one particular lens. There's data that suggests that Kamala Harris might have done better if she had distanced herself from Joe Biden, put some daylight, off a different perspective on the crisis in the Middle East. She chose not to do that. But the narrative here is shifting because the generations are advancing. I'm wondering if that's true around the globe and what impact that has on this conversation about anti-Semitism, again, as we see this far-right ascendancy taking hold politically all around the world. Her name is Rachel Shabi. Her book is Off-White, The Truth About Semitism. I am Tavis Smiley. More when we come forward.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check your sunroof is closed first before driving through the car wash.
Whoa, 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 no, wait, whoa.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Who cares about the black community in Altadena? We do. On Saturday, March 8th at 10 a.m., it's the premiere of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This new weekly show will explore the deep roots and resilience of Altadena's black community as we track its recovery and reimagine its future. From relief efforts to rebuilding, we're raising up voices, stories, and solutions to build back Black Altadena better and stronger than ever. It's Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr every Saturday at 10 a.m. beginning Saturday, March 8th with an encore presentation, Sundays at noon.
James Farr, the man who is the voice for Black Los Angeles.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Rachel Shabi. The book is called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. Before I get to that question I posed a moment ago about this far-right ascendancy, I could have started our conversation here, but I'm watching my time as we push toward the close here. The book is called, again, Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. The subtitle we all get, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. Why Off-White as a title?
Yeah, it's a great question. Off-white because it came up so often in conversations with Jewish people that I conducted for the book. So obviously there are Jews of color who are not white. Clearly, they are Jews of color. But for white presenting Jews, it just speaks to this ambiguity and messiness about being appraised or being coded white. So people like me who show up as white understand that we're not going to experience from the minute we walk out of our front door structural or systematic racism by and large. We're not going to be dealing with people's inordinate aggressions and prejudices premised on skin color. By and large, there are caveats. However, when I interviewed a lot of Jewish people and said, well, do you self-define as white? They would say, well, yes, but would be all the experiences of anti-Semitism that they'd experienced as racialized minorities. And so there's this contingency for so many Jewish people of, yes, in the post-war era, and especially in the US, there has been a Jewish absorption into whiteness, and that absorption by and large has been a success story. And at the same time, that contingency of, but for most of Jewish history, Jewish people were not coded white. They were coded other, racialized, persecuted, and killed because of it. So it speaks to that contingency that a lot of Jewish people feel about whiteness. And in fact, when you look at the history of anti-Semitism and it's the way it interacts with racism, you see that the contingency of whiteness, the category error of Jewish people as white, is really part of the whole thing of race being invented in order to justify racism. It's part of that same story.
Glad I asked that question. Now you understand why the book is called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. Our remaining moments with the book's author, Rachel Shabi, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Life blooms in beautiful ways. The Afia Center invites you to celebrate At the End with Red Gala, honoring the strength and resilience of Black women living with HIV. Join us for an evening of empowerment as we launch the Barbara Cambridge Scholarship and kick off Herstory Month with our theme, Life in Full Bloom. Your support helps create vital HIV programming and builds a future where every voice is heard and every story matters. The End with Red Gala, because every flower deserves to bloom. To learn more and to donate, visit theafiacenter.org.
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
It does indeed for 4 minutes. The 4 minutes left in this hour, our guest has been Rachel Shabi, author of the book Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. So in the few minutes I have left let's turn this corner to talk about whether or not with this right ascendancy politically happening all around the globe, again, it's not just Donald Trump here in the U.S., I wonder whether or not you see, how can I put this, narrative shifts, whether or not you see pushback, whether or not you see a changing agenda, as you know, here in the country, as I mentioned earlier, as new generations come online. There's a far different way of seeing this particular issue, this conversation about anti-Semitism, the crisis in the Middle East, et cetera, et cetera. Is that just a U.S. phenomenon?
No, it's much more widely, and I absolutely agree with you that it's taking place, and it's one of the things that is inspiring me in this effort to cultivate hope in a political moment of gloom. It is definitely the case that the last 15 months have accelerated a shift that has been in process for a while now. And we can see it exactly as you say among younger generations. We're looking at horrendous bombardment of Gaza. We have several human rights organizations and several scholars of genocide, including Jewish ones, including Israeli ones, say that it fits the definition of a genocidal war, Israel's assault on Gaza and complete decimation of Gaza. And that has horrified people, including Jewish people. So we are seeing, particularly amongst younger populations, growing opposition to that, and a reluctance to cleave to perhaps more mainstream Jewish communal bodies and their approach to the issue. It does track, exactly as you're saying, it does track with the idea that, we have a younger generation that is more progressive, more widely, that is producing and understanding politics premised on equity and justice and tapping into liberation movements and anti-racist movements. And so when they look at Israel-Palestine and when they see the occupation, Israel's military occupation, which is violent every day, when they see the oppression and subjugation of Palestinians, and when they see this horrendous war on Palestinians in Gaza, it of course fits in to those deeply held values around anti-racism, justice, and equality. And so we are seeing that shift, and it does give me hope.
The thing I love about this book and this conversation is that wherever you stand on this issue of Israel and Palestine, we have to agree that we can all benefit from depoliticizing this term anti-Semitism. It's become far too politicized, and we started this conversation, in case you got in late, talking about those 3 college presidents who were put on the hot seat in front of Elise Stefanik in Congress. And again, all that did to just politicize this issue even more so. But we could use a good depoliticizing of these conversations around notions of anti-Semitism. The book is called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. I've got 45 seconds here. With a title like that, clearly it grabs one's attention. What do you hope the takeaway is for readers who are brave enough to read the book?
Well, I hope that people, I think the current conversation is confusing and a dumpster fire. And so I hope that engaging with this book untangles some of the reasons why it has become such a car crash of a conversation. And I also just wanted to say that I really appreciate this conversation with you. I really appreciate you and the dialogue that you've been open to having with me.
It's my great honor to have you on, and you've appreciated it no more than I have. It's good to have conversations again with academics who have usable intellects, who can usher us into conversations about tricky and thorny topics and make it all make sense. And I'm holding on to what you said a moment ago. Every day I leave the studio holding on to something, and I just got it. I love that admonition from Rachel Shabi of moments ago that we are trying to cultivate hope in a political moment of doom. That's the line for the day, that we're trying to cultivate hope in a political moment of doom. Thank you for that, Rachel. Thank you for the book. Once again, it's called Off-White, The Truth About Anti-Semitism. The author is Rachel Shabi, who I've been delighted to have had on this program. Thank you, Rachel. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. All the best to you too.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Black Texas Democrat Congressman Al Green is being censured by the House. During President Trump's speech Tuesday night, Green stood in the aisle of the House chamber and waved his cane at the president. Representative Al Green is preparing to file articles of impeachment against President Trump following his controversial comments about Gaza, suggesting U.S. takeover and resettlement of Palestinians. Green called these remarks dastardly deeds and akin to ethnic cleansing. Black New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams is expected to announce her mayoral campaign. She criticized Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams and vowed to fight President Trump's policies against immigrant families. And a rift has emerged between late singer and politician Jerry Butler's family and his caretaker on March 12th. Get BIN News on demand